Hey everybody, Caleb here again, and in this video we are going to learn about the wild world of arrays. An array is a collection of values, but all the values inside are organized by index, meaning the order that you put them in. So if you append an item to an array, it goes to the end, and so on and so forth. That's how values are organized. Let's go ahead and create one and see how they work. So go ahead and get started with a playground, create a blank playground, and just call it arrays. Save it wherever. Make it a bit bigger for your screen, make it fit nicely however you want, and we can get rid of that first line of boilerplate code. So what we are going to do is we're going to first define an array. We can do this explicitly and implicitly, and I'm going to show you right now. What I can do is I can type var cards, and in order to create an array, we use brackets. Okay, we use the straight brackets to create an array. Now I'm going to create an array of strings, and I'm going to explicitly tell the Swift compiler that I'm doing this. So I'm going to use a colon and then create some brackets and put the type inside. This tells the Swift compiler that I am creating an array with the brackets, and all the items inside are going to be of type string. Now, wherever I declare it at the end of the equal sign, this is where I'm actually going to put in the values. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in my first value. So the first card will be an ace. All right? In order to add a second value, I can put a comma, put some quotes, and I could make a king. I could put another comma there and add a third item, queen. And let's add a fourth item. Let's add the joker. Alrighty? So I have 4 items in my array. If I run this, you will see them all print out over here on the side. Pretty cool stuff. But since these are all strings, I can actually let the Swift compiler infer that. So I can get rid of the colon and the type declaration and run this just the same as before, which is pretty cool. This is an implicitly declared array. Very, very awesome. Now, if I wanted to get an item out of this array, I can go into the cards array, and in order to actually pull out a particular item, I need to give it the index number of where it is situated in the array. So in this instance, this is the first value, second, third, and fourth. So if I were to go ahead and use my brackets at the end here, like so, if I were to pull out the first item and run this, let's see what we get. We get king. That's pretty confusing. The reason for this is because arrays in Swift use what is called zero indexing, where the first item in an array or a collection is actually index 0, and then moving on is 1, then 2, then 3. So if we run this, you'll see we get ace for index 0. 0 in Swift is the same as 1 when dealing with indexes. Pretty cool. So that is how we can create an array. That is how we can access items in an array. But how do we modify this? Let's say that we want to add something to our array. In order to do that, I can type cards dot, and as you can see, there are a bunch of different functions I can call on an array. The most important one is append new element. And if I select that, I can pass in a new element that's of type string to my array and add some values. So let's go ahead and let's put a string here and let's add in the jack. Alrighty? Pretty cool. And if we read the description by holding down Option and clicking, you can see that it adds a new element at the end of the array. And this example here shows you there's a variable called numbers, and it's an array of integers. They do numbers.append and they pass in 100. Then when they print it out, there's an 100 at the end of the array. If we go ahead and print, we get our array here, and look at that. There's the jack right at the end. Pretty cool stuff. But what if I wanted to remove an item from an array? I could type cards.remove, and you can see right here, remove at integer. Now, it removes and returns the element at the specified position. So if I click this, let's say that I want to remove the king. The king I know is at index 1. If I run this, it should remove it from the array and return the value king. If I run this, you can see that happens, but how do I know for sure that king was removed from my cards array? Well, if I go ahead and just call cards after it's been removed, watch what happens. King is no longer in the deck of cards. That's pretty cool. So that is how we can add items to an array. That's how we can remove items from an array. But what if we wanted to insert the king back into the deck, but maybe at the 4th spot? Let's go ahead and do that by calling cards.insert new element at integer. I can add a new element, which in this case, I'm going to pass the king back in, okay? I want to add it at the 4th place. So if I remember my 0 indexing, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3. If I pass this in here to 3 and I run this, check it out, we added the king to the right spot. That's so cool. So there's one last thing that we need to do, and basically we need to know how to modify items at a certain index. So let's say that I wanted to change the value of queen to something else. So let's go ahead and go to cards, and I can use these brackets here to pull out an item at a specific index. In this case, it's 1, right? And if I pass in a 1 into those brackets and I run the code, you can see we get queen. Now it doesn't remove it, it just presents the value and prints it out. But if I wanted to change that value, I could pass in something like, how about a new card, the Jester? Let's pretend that's a card in a deck of cards. If I run this, you can see that the value here changes, but above it still says queen. Well, that's because we changed it below, and in order to see the changes, we need to print out cards one more time. Check it out. Where queen used to be, it now reads Jester. Since this is a variable, we can modify all these values. However, there may be a type of data where you would use an array with a constant. Now, I could say let, fingers equals, and let's just go ahead and pass in some strings here. We can say thumb, and we can pass in another item here. Well, let's do this the fun way. We passed in a thumb. Now let's say fingers.append new element. We'll pass in a pointer finger. We'll do fingers.append one more time. We will do middle finger, fingers.append, we'll pass in a ring finger, and then fingers.append, and we'll pass in the pinky. Now, if we print out our array of fingers, we can see that we have now added all these values. Ah, I almost got you. This is a constant, so therefore we cannot add anything to this array. We can't delete anything. We can't do anything to it, because it is not available to be mutated or changed. So in order to actually have these in the array, we would need to manually add them when we create it. And there are a few instances when you would need to actually do this, but if you needed to, this would be the way to do it. You would need to add all the values in from the beginning, and you can't change or modify it. So it is good for some things, which I'm sure you can think of them. But in essence, this is how arrays work. We can pass in values. They are stored at a specific index. 0 indexing is what happens when the first index is 0, and then it carries on from 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We can remove items, we can append items, insert items at specific spots, and change the values of items at specific indices. That is how arrays work in a nutshell, and we're going to head over to the next video where we're going to talk about dictionaries, another collection type. I'll see you there.